Uber is fined €290 million by the EU's Data Protection Authority for transferring personal details of European drivers to the US.
Portuguese authorities call for calm following a 5.3 magnitude earthquake.
Spanish olive oil producers are accusing supermarkets of inflating prices by taking advantage of production shortages.
Uber has been fined €290 million by the Data Protection Authority in the Netherlands, where the body's European headquarters are located. The ride-hailing company is accused of breaching EU data rules by transferring personal details of European drivers to the US. The Dutch DPA says the company lacked adequate protection between 2020 and 2022. In a statement, Uber replied that the decision was flawed and the extraordinary fine was completely unjustified. The company is likely to appeal the ruling. The company, as well as the not-for-profit association Computer and Communications Industry, argue that the fine is targeting a period of significant legal uncertainty. In 2020, an EU court invalidated the privacy shield that allowed for data transfers between the EU and the US. Until the end of 2023, there was no clear set of rules until the EU-US data privacy framework came into force. Uber has been using those rules since then, but the Dutch authority argues it cannot ignore the lack of sufficient protection during the period investigated after a group of drivers in France filed a complaint.
Portuguese authorities are calling for calm following a 5.3 Richter scale earthquake that struck in the early hours of Monday morning. Government officials say the event was not strong enough to warrant executing recovery plans.
Não, é uma preocupação no sentido que a preocupação é saber se temos meios de resposta um fenómeno natural com esta intensidade já permite verificar como os meios estão ou não estão em prontidão e com capacidade de resposta. Portanto, sob esse ponto de vista, digamos que é uma vantagem colateral de um evento destes, é poder fazer esse teste de forma real.
The epicenter of the earthquake was recorded in the Atlantic, 58 kilometers west of Sines, but felt as far as Lisbon. Up to 3 aftershocks were recorded.
Acordei e depois o barulho dos telemóveis e as coisas em casa também a fazer barulho. Foi assustador.
The earthquake caused no personal or material damage so far, according to Portuguese authorities. It is Portugal's strongest seismic event recorded since 2009, when a 5.6 quake struck the south coast.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said a large-scale attack on Hezbollah positions in Lebanon is not the end of the story. Israel launched a wave of airstrikes across southern Lebanon on Sunday in what it said was a preemptive strike. Hezbollah said it had launched hundreds of rockets and drones to avenge the killing of one of its top commanders last month.
חיזבאללה ניסה לפנות בוקר לתקוף את מדינת ישראל ברקטות ובכטב"מים. אנחנו הנחינו את צה"ל לבצע מתקפת מנע עצימה להסרת האיום. צה"ל השמיד אלפי רקטות קצרות טווח, והן כולן היו מיועדות לפגוע באזרחינו ובכוחותינו בגליל.
The leader of Hezbollah said the group's attack on Israel in retaliation for the killing of Fuad Shakur in Beirut last month had been delayed to give Gaza ceasefire talks a chance.
هو الخشية من رد محور المقاومة وتداعيات الردود والذهاب إلى حرب إقليمية ومشاكل. بلشوا يحكوا إنه في وقف العدوان ووقف إطلاق نار وطولوا بالكم إلى آخره. بالحقيقة نحن تريثنا. طبعا لم نقل لأحد أننا سنتريث، ولكن حقيقة الأمر أننا تريثنا حتى نعطي الفرصة لهذه المفاوضات.
Two Egyptian security sources said that the latest round of ceasefire talks in Cairo have ended without an agreement, with neither Hamas nor Israel agreeing to any of the compromises proposed by mediators. An anonymous US official said talks will continue at lower levels in the coming days in an effort to bridge remaining gaps. Solo protesters have gathered outside the French embassy in Moscow to call for the release of Telegram founder Pavel Durov, who was arrested in France on Saturday. One protester carried a sign calling on the French not to follow in Putin's footsteps and to respect freedom of speech. He was later detained by police officers. Activists in Russia have tried to skirt the ban on unauthorized protests by staging single-person pickets, but even they're punishable by a fine or up to 15 days in prison. Russian-born Durov was arrested after landing in his private jet in an airport outside Paris. The arrest follows an investigation into the lack of moderators on Telegram. Police allege that allows criminal activity such as drug dealing and paedophilia networking to take place unhindered on the app. Telegram has become one of the leading social media platforms, ranking alongside giants like Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp and Instagram. However, it still doesn't meet the requirements of the European Union, which has led to it being temporarily suspended in some member countries such as Spain. Prosecutors in Germany have released the name of the 26-year-old Syrian man suspected of killing 3 people in a stabbing attack in the city of Solingen on Friday. The man has been identified as Issa al-H. His surname has been withheld in line with German privacy laws. On Sunday, he was flown by helicopter to appear in the Federal Court of Justice in Karlsruhe for his first hearing following his arrest on Saturday. The Federal Public Prosecutor's Office said he'd been remanded in custody on suspicion of murder and membership of the so-called Islamic State terrorist group. The German daily newspaper Bild said on Saturday night that Al-H approached officers on the street in Solingen just after 11 p.m. local time to turn himself in. His arrest has sparked relief among many of Solingen's 160,000 residents.
Sehr gut finde ich, dass sich die Person entweder gestellt oder dass sie zumindest festgenommen wurde. Entscheidend und was vielleicht wirklich interessant ist, warum.
Natürlich beruhigt einen, dass der sich angeblich da jetzt gestellt hat, aber ich bin sprachlos und total erschüttert.
German media reported that Al-H's asylum claim had been denied and that he was supposed to have been deported last year. At a memorial church service on Sunday, some residents said they were afraid the far right would use the stabbing to whip up hatred of migrants.
Of course, we are all very afraid that the right wing is getting more and more power, and that's definitely not the way. Of course, we have to ask some hard questions, but, racism is never the answer.
The attack happened on a central square in Solingen during the Festival of Diversity, an event to mark the 650th anniversary of the city. It was supposed to run until Sunday, but was subsequently called off.
The French Interior Minister has condemned a rise in anti-Semitism following an arson attack on a synagogue in a seaside resort town in southern France on Saturday. One police officer was injured in the attack, and the suspect, identified by local press as a 33-year-old Algerian man, was also wounded in a shootout with police.
Mettre le feu de façon volontaire à une synagogue où le rabbin, sa famille, habitent en attendant avec une hache, c'est un acte antisémite, il faut le dénoncer comme tel. Sinon, on crée une suspicion et une confusion des genres, et je pense que les Français attendent, et notamment nos compatriotes juifs, qu'on mette des mots sur les choses. Il y a aujourd'hui une augmentation des actes antisémites. La haine des Juifs, la haine d'Israël touche des enfants, des femmes et des hommes français qui ont le droit de vivre la religion qu'ils souhaitent.
In Paris, people gathered on Sunday to express solidarity against racism, anti-Semitism, and all forms of discrimination. One protester voiced her anger and condemned all acts of violence.
Moi, je dis, c'est la colère. On doit être en colère. Ça suffit de faire comme toujours on a fait, enfin en tout cas les juifs, parce que moi je suis juive, de toujours se soumettre, de dire oui, pardon, nanana. Non, merde, on est en colère. C'est pas normal d'agresser un mec parce qu'il est juif, c'est pas normal d'agresser un mec parce qu'il est musulman, c'est pas normal d'agresser un mec parce qu'il est noir, parce qu'il est ci, parce qu'il est ça. Il faut qu'on apprenne à vivre ensemble.
Prosecutors considered the attack as a terrorist act. Since the start of the Israel-Hamas war, the security around Jewish worship places in France have been strengthened. Russia unleashed its biggest air attack on Ukraine since its Kursk invasion, in which 3 people have been killed. Many of Kyiv's residents hid from the air attack in the subway, and according to its mayor, power and water supplies in the city have been disrupted by the attack. The barrage, which appeared to target Ukraine's energy infrastructure, hit 15 regions. It began around midnight and continued beyond daybreak.
Heat waves and drought have been crippling olive oil production in recent years. Spain, the world's largest olive oil provider, expects production to drop by 50% in 2024. On top of creating a perfect breeding ground for counterfeit products, shortages sent prices through the roof. A study by farmer association Unió Llauradora argues supermarkets increased margins over producers by 75% over last year.
El preu en origen dels nostres productors ha pujat un 3%, però, sin embargo, el consumidor està pagant un 59% més en les grans línies.
Supermarkets deny inflating prices.
L'oli d'oliva verge s'ha mantingut per baix de 10 euros durant tot el 2024.
Consumer organizations say prices remained high despite the complete elimination of VAT on olive oil in Spain since July the 1st.